Motherhood in Motion,
the podcast for mothers with ambition.
Hi everyone, this is Anushka Kalyanpur DeLuca, founder of Nannies and More and co-host of Motherhood in Motion. I'm also a mom of 3 under 4. I'm joined by my lovely co-host.
Welcome back to Motherhood in Motion, Constance. I'm the founder of Both and we are super excited to have Lucy here today, who's going to introduce herself. But a little sneak peek already, she's the founder of Homegrown Nurseries in Dubai, which have a very special place in Anushka's heart because all of her kids go there. And I've heard a little bit about it. I'm super excited to talk more about it. So with this said, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you for having me today. I know we had a bit of a rough start with me running around all over the house trying to find a quiet spot away from my children, but we got there in the end. But no, thank you for the kind introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Lucy. I'm one of the founders of Homegrown Nursery along with my business partner. We set up Homegrown over 15 years ago now in 2011. We've had a wonderful journey. And as part of that journey as well, I also founded a charity in India called Harmony House. And we do work in partnership with Homegrown, bringing children together to really understand how little people can make a big difference in the world as well. We want to make sure that children learn how to give back from a very young age as well, which is part of the ethos of Homegrown Nursery.
Absolutely. And Lucy, it really does mean so much to me that you are on here with us today. We really like to think of making intentional choices for our children, especially as you said so eloquently earlier, trusting our children in a place that are really aligned with our values. And from the moment we did our visit at Homegrown, I could just see, even from the little activities and artwork and everything, how intentional Homegrown is with, of course, its ethos around being eco-friendly and sustainability and giving back. And what I wasn't expecting is also finding an incredible community of parents and friends. Just couldn't be more grateful to have you today. Just to maybe start off, if you could share a little bit more about yourself personally and professionally before we dive in.
So I have lived in Dubai since 1999. I've been here, it's coming up for 26 years living here. I was 21 when I left England. I was born and grew up and educated in the UK and just outside of London, and I did my degree in London. And I actually came over to Abu Dhabi originally just to teach for a year. I studied education and I wanted to get out of the UK. Figured I'd do a year in Abu Dhabi, maybe go to Japan, teach English, then perhaps somewhere else in the world. But as with a lot of people that come to the UAE, I stayed, I didn't leave. I met my husband here, I had my family here, all 3 of my children, Amelia, who just turned 18, Jude, who is 16, and India, who is 13, were born here in the UAE and have been educated here. And I think it was when my children were small, I was working with my husband. We have a business called Insignia together, which he now runs. I was in corporate. After being a teacher, we opened a business together. And it was at that time when I got pregnant that I realized that I don't know if I could be in that industry anymore. It was very fast paced. It was very long hours. It was very intense. And it wasn't really my passion. My passion's always been children. So when I was pregnant with Amelia, my first child, I was on bed rest for 3 months. I did a lot of thinking, and I decided at that point that I would take a step back. Originally, I had decided that I would work, be a working mother. We'd kind of set up an area where I could take Amelia to work with me, but I quickly learned that that was not something that I wanted to do, not in that environment, such a corporate environment. And I think when Amelia was 1 year old, we started sending her to a nursery for a couple of days a week so that I could kind of get back into the workspace. And it was then that I realized I wanted to go back to what I did originally, what my passion was, which was children. So before we started Homegrown, I started our foundation in India, Harmony House, which is a NGO dedicated to children aged between 0 months to 21 years. We have 1,200 children. We provide education, nutrition, social services, welfare services. We have a special needs facility. We have a dedicated sports ground. We have technology labs. We have STEM labs, and so much more. And that passion, again, grew out of my love for children, my immense need and want and desire to be able to help others. I think that's always been a trait of who I am. And also because my husband's Indian, visiting India regularly, seeing the need, the poverty, the unfortunate situation that many of these children were living in, growing up in, being born into, and realizing that not a lot was being done about it. Now, obviously, I started very small. It was such a journey to open that. It was, in a different country, the rules, the regulations, the red tape. But my husband was there to help, and his family, my mother-in-law, we all kind of put our heads together and found a way to register, which was one of the challenges, and start. And we started with just 12 children, and we're now 15, 16 years on, and we have 1,200 children now, and so many wonderful success stories of children that have managed to work their way out of poverty and into financial freedom through the education programs that we provide. And obviously not only does that lift them out of poverty, but it lifts the entire family away from that cycle of poverty that they were born into. So that's been an incredible journey as well. And of course, working with Homegrown and the paired partnership program that we have, it's a really lovely synergy because, as you know, Anushka, when you come to Homegrown, part of the fees that you pay also pays for a paired child. So when your child comes to the nursery, you get given a profile of a child who's in Harmony House, and they could be small, from age 1 or all the way up to 21. So it's really random which child you get, and it could be a male, it could be a female, it could be somebody that has special needs or physical, mental challenges, and it's a really wonderful way for parents to know that not only are they providing their children with an informative year's education, but they're also providing another child with an education, and really I think that's one of the most unique things about Homegrown. The fact that parents, obviously they want to provide the best for their child, but don't we all want to be able to do something for others as well, whether near or far? We all innately want to give back. We're all humans, we're all connected, and I think it's a wonderful start for children, and I really would love to see this model kind of permeate into other nurseries and schools, because it's a really cost-effective way to provide education to those who just otherwise wouldn't have a chance to receive it.
What a story. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I would have wanted for my child, which I didn't have in the end. But the whole giving back and the value-based part of it, which makes it so special, right? Because like what you said, in Dubai, we have an incredible amount of schools and nurseries. It's a market to a certain extent, with a lot of marketing, and there's a lot of money behind everything. And I feel sharing your story and seeing how it links to you personally, to your story, to your values, it's such a valuable thing to see. And it would be interesting for me because you started all of this after becoming a mom, and we've seen in our survey that ambition doesn't stop after being a mother. It actually stays the same, or it grows even. So we have 70% of women that said that ambition stayed the same or grew. How do you integrate your children into your business? How did you do that in the last years? They're now, 18, 16, and 13.
I was so lucky that when I opened Beverly and I opened Homegrown, my children were very small. So I had Jude, he was 2, and Amelia was 3. She was FS1. So I was very lucky that all of my children went through Homegrown. So in terms of work-life balance. My children would come to nursery with me. They would go into the classrooms. Initially, of course, it was kind of like a little bit difficult for them to see mummy and mummy saying, okay, you're in a classroom. But they, children are so adaptable. It's one thing I find so fascinating about them, that very soon, I'd be walking through the nursery and they'd wave and they'd say, look, mummy, and they understood that this is mummy's place of work, as well as, their special place to learn and play and develop new friendships and connections. So I was very, very lucky. And when my children got to school age, the school was literally around the corner as well. So it was very easy for me to drop off, one or two children and then take another one with me to the nursery. You just really find your rhythm, right? I mean, I was very, very fortunate that also because of the calendar of Homegrown, it being a British curriculum and my children being at a British school, the holidays I was able to mostly take off with them. And obviously none of this happens without having a great team around you. That is the most important and essential thing if you are going to be an entrepreneur as a mother, to make sure that you have like-minded people around you who can support you. I was very lucky because literally everybody that I worked with were mothers as well, and not necessarily all young mothers, different stages, but we were all women. So I've been very fortunate and very blessed to work over the years with some very, very impressive women who have contributed so much to the growth and development of Homegrown. So I've been very, very fortunate.
That's really fantastic, and I think really speaks to how I've seen you and Beverly work together. For those who don't know, Homegrown has 2 locations, and Lucy sits in one and Beverly sits in the other. And I see how you guys are always finding ways to strategize and link things across the locations. Constance and I are doing this podcast together. We've been co-researchers. A lot of the businesses that I've been really inspired by, I'm thinking of, Crunch Moms here. I'm thinking of this Indian-inspired jewelry brand, Olio, which a friend of mine started, are run by 2 incredible women. How is that experience for you? How do you both work together? What are some challenges, but obviously so many, positives as well? We'd love to, learn a little bit more about that.
For Beverly and I, it runs from a really deep love and respect for each other. We were friends before we became business partners, and of course that could have been a little bit detrimental to our friendship. But we established the rules and boundaries right from the get-go, that we would listen to one another, that we would take each other's opinions and feelings into consideration at all times, because let's be honest, emotions are always in the mix. We like to think that they're not, but they are. You can't help it, especially when it's something so personal as developing your own brand and business. And we think alike. We're very lucky that we're like-minded thinkers. Literally we'll send each other the same suggestions. I was just with her now, actually. We were opening the new location, and it was something simple like the color of the wall, and I had said one thing, she'd said another. But we listen to each other, and it really comes down to who feels the strongest about something and who's willing to kind of compromise. So there's a lot of compromise, and we don't have an ego with each other. I think that's a great thing as well. And for example, today I was very strong-minded about something, and Beverly was as well. And in the end, she was like, "Okay, I'm going to listen to you, and let's go with it." And there'll be other occasions where I need to listen to her, and I don't think we argue at all. We're very, very lucky. I think honestly, on heart, in these kind of 15, 16 years, we've probably only had one argument and disagreement, which I think is really, really impressive. And even then, we worked it out through talking to each other and, expressing our love and respect for one another. And I think that we just have this incredible relationship, and we're just able to again find our rhythm, we're able to take on different challenges. She's got certain strengths, I have certain strengths. There are some things that I just can't handle. I don't have the capacity or the brain power to do it, and she absolutely does, and vice versa. So I think we make a really, really good team. And as I said, I can't think of a better person that, who I would rather work with. And we are extremely grateful to have one another. And we do tell each other all the time how fortunate and blessed we are to have each other to lean on and to be on this journey together. And I think it's actually so much more rewarding to do it alongside somebody else. And I've spoken to a number of entrepreneurs, women and men as well, who always say when they find somebody that they can truly be themselves with, be very honest with, and follow a path, to this sort of collective success that you want to reach. It's just, not only is it easier because you can take the load off one another when needed, but it's also, as I said, so much more rewarding to be able to do that with somebody who you value, trust, and love.
I love the way you frame that. And, in our research, we've been seeing how not partner in the context of a co-founder, but a partner in the context of a married relationship, having a strong partner that supports you is so key. And I'm going to read back to you what you just said to me. You said, finding a compromise and figuring out where one person feels most strongly, letting them run with that, right? Always looking at what is the collective success, how you can take a load off of each other. When you were saying all these different things, all I could think about was that's what we want in both our personal lives and our professional lives.
Sometimes my husband's like, I wish he was nice to me. As you were so nice to Beverly. And actually, it's like a marriage. Beverly, it is like a marriage, and God bless my husband. He gets the word. All our husbands get the worst of us sometimes, don't they? And he sometimes says, "Why don't you speak to me like you speak to Beverly?" And I love him, but which shows that we do have our stresses and we do, have other challenges at home. But no, I have an incredible, phenomenal, supportive husband. Whom none of this I would be able to do without as well. But you're so right. I actually had a conversation on another podcast when somebody asked me, as a young woman, an entrepreneur who's perhaps still studying and looking forward into that journey, what would your advice be? And the only thing I could think of was, you need to find a husband, a partner in life who is going to be there for you and support you, because it is a roller coaster, and you need somebody who is going to propel you and lift you and be there for you and pick you up, because there are very, very difficult challenges. There are days where you're like, I don't know if I can do this, is it all worth it? Sometimes we can think maybe our peace of mind, is worth more than some of the struggles that we have to deal with every day. But you need that person to remind you that you can do it. Remember how far you've come. Remember when you went through this, but you got through the other side. So, I think relationships, whether that be with your husband, with your business partner, with your children, you constantly have to, first of all, have an immense amount of gratitude for those relationships and those people in your lives, but also be able to compromise. And one thing I've learned is that you have to let go of the ego as well, because that gets you nowhere. Unfortunately, I've learned that the hard way.
I couldn't agree more. We were at an event a few weeks ago, and there was Dr. Mariana. She did a PhD in understanding what do women need to get to the top, and at this time it was really to the top in a company. And one of the things she found is a supportive husband. And it was really about that. And it's anywhere that you see is like you just need to make the right choice in who you marry, which will make such a big influence in your life going forward, right? And even if you think about what ambition looks like for you, and I wanted to ask you that because, you started this your own journey a long time ago. Your kids have in between grown into little adults, not yet, but some of them, right? Has your ambition changed? Has your ambition started? How do you see your ambition evolving during this time?
I think if I'm being completely honest, I feel I'm not an ambitious person. I feel like everything that has transpired has happened completely organically. The growth of Homegrown happened because there was a need, because we did have success and more people wanted to join. And we wanted to be able to provide the facilities and the services for as many families and children as possible. We have had conversations, Beverly and I, about, expansion, growth. What do we do? What do we want 10 years down the line? Do we eventually want to sell? Do we want to hold on to it? Do we want to pass it on to our children? We have all of these conversations. I think fundamentally what myself and Beverly do is take it day by day. If you can believe it, we never sat down once and wrote a business plan. Despite our husbands saying, you can't work like this, our accountant is so upset with us most days because we do not ever sit down and have accounts meetings. And if it's requested, both of us go into that meeting reluctantly because it's not our passion. It's not where we find joy. For Beverly and I, we want to be able to find joy, and that's being with children, that's seeing the evolution of the child come through the nursery, that's being able to provide the best environment for them, that's being able to connect with the families, with the parents, and honestly giving them the best early years childhood foundation that we possibly can. That's what brings us joy. We like to be creative. For us, it's organic. We are not ambitious people. We never wanted to take over Dubai and open 30 nurseries. We wanted to do what we loved. And perhaps that's been the reason why we've had the success on a small scale. We do, of course, want to be able to provide more opportunities for children to come to Homegrown. So if there's a need, we will continue to expand, grow, and evolve. But that's not our priority. I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted to hear, but that's me being very, very honest. Ambition has never been the forefront of what we do. It's always been about doing what we love and providing services for our children to the very best of our ability.
And that is ambition at its core.
That's exactly how we would define ambition, right? I think there is this archaic definition or conception amongst us because of societal norms and the way the conversations around ambition have been led to make everyone think about climbing the corporate ladder or growth and expansion or financial success. But it's so clear, you guys are extremely ambitious. You're ambitious to create joy and providing as many children as possible with the best early years foundation. To me, that sounds like ambition.
And even children in India, right? I mean, it's those things.
I think that's always been true to who we are. And, honestly, we've been approached by, large investment firms, large education companies that want to come in, want to invest, want to see us grow. It's just never interested us. Again, because, where is the joy in that? Yes, you might get a big payout, but what about our team? What about our staff who, actually work with us because they enjoy the ethos and the uniqueness of the workplace? What about the families who choose us because we are independent, because we are not corporate? We always have human values over corporate values. You can't say that about everywhere you go to. And I think when you walk into the nursery, it is quite obvious to most people that it is a place founded out of love. And I think the presence of both Beverly and I being at the nurseries, because again, a lot of nurseries, particularly those that have brands where they've got more than 5 or 6 branches, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have contact with the owners, whether you're somebody who's working at the nursery or a parent or a stakeholder. I just think that we just love and enjoy what we do, and we very much want, at the moment, who knows, things might change, but at the moment we're very happy with kind of the independence that we have and the autonomy of being able to make decisions quickly based on real needs and not on a spreadsheet.
Absolutely, that's great, and really to us exemplifies motherhood and ambition across your different seasons of motherhood too, right? But I wanted to shift gears a little bit. You know, in my work with nannies and more, I am often thinking about childcare as, you know, critical infrastructure, right? It's not a perk, it's not a luxury, it is critical infrastructure. We've seen from our data, from our survey, we know this as moms, that, you know, when the crisis hit this region a few months ago, that not having schools being able to function was such, you know, it had such an impact on parents, and I know on schools. And I know Homegrown and so many others put so much time and effort in, you know, trying to ensure as much continuity as possible for children, for families. So we just wanted to learn a little bit more, you know, from your perspective. What, you know, decisions did you have to make in the initial days and weeks? How did you all pivot? What were some lessons learned? I think there's so much there that we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, it was.
And I know now there's like a little bit of a lull, so you can hopefully think about it. But
It was a really challenging time, I'm not going to lie. It almost felt like COVID all over again, I think, for schools and for nurseries. The difference between schools and nurseries, of course, is that schools, you know, are kind of sort of mandatory, and you would pay your fees. But for us, we didn't have fees coming in. We didn't know when we were going to have fees coming in, and we had one of the challenges was we needed to make sure that our employees were secure, and we'd had very honest conversations with our employees and saying, if this goes on for a certain amount of time, we are going to have to look at strategies. You know, we appealed to teachers to have a think about different options. You know, and one of the options was unpaid leave. One of the options was working online, and obviously there were certain people that we knew couldn't take a reduction in salary, and they were always on at the forefront of everything as well. So, of course, as I said, we don't like talking about numbers and finances. So, you know, this was really outside of our comfort zone when you actually then have to focus solely on that, because you want to be able to have a nursery to open when everybody can return back. So that obviously was one challenge for every nursery. And, you know, we're part of the nursery owners group in Dubai, and I think every single nursery found that extremely challenging. And sadly, some really, really good nurseries weren't able to sustain and pull through. So we're very fortunate that we did. Then obviously we needed to make sure we remained connected to all of our children and our families. And we didn't know whether they were going to come back or not, because, as you know, so many people, particularly with younger children, left the region. And nursery is not mandatory. A lot of parents emailed us and said, listen, we've left Dubai, we don't think we're coming back, or we don't feel comfortable sending our children, you know, to nursery every day. But, you know, as you're probably aware, Anushka, because you come to the nursery, you know, when we did open, actually families kind of rethought everything. People wanted to come back to Dubai. They wanted to have their children in nursery. They wanted to go back to their normal lives. It was all of us, you know, so they did a phenomenal job. And my children, I had one child doing A-levels and one doing GCSEs at that time. So, and unfortunately, my son in particular was delighted when he heard that the exams might be cancelled. I mean, there was sort of a celebration in the house. However, when they did finally get cancelled, they actually turned around and said, we're cancelling the exams, and that means you won't get a qualification. So we were like, what do you mean? What does that mean? So my daughter, who was doing A-levels, you know, well, not just my daughter, every single child who was doing the UK A-levels in the UAE, in the Gulf region, were then told, you're not going to get your A-level because you can't sit the exam. So the schools, again, had to be very, you know, quick thinking and change the exam board to the international A-levels and GCSE. We're still waiting to hear from my daughter's university if they will accept the new grades and a new exam board, because obviously we applied on a different exam board. So I think there's just been challenges all around for families, for business owners, for children, again, going online. But I think one thing that I have learned from this is that, as individuals, as a society, we're just so adaptable. And the one thing that stands out is compassion. When we reached out to parents, with full transparency with what was going on at the nursery, our parents came back and said, "We support you, we're with you. We want to come back. You're handling it." The reassurance that we were getting from our parents. I think perhaps they could see through the communications that we really wanted things to be okay for everybody. And in turn, that generates, that warmth and connection from them. So it was really lovely to, not only have full support from our incredible team, but also from the parents and families as well. Really motivated us to, get through this difficult period. And we'd done it before in COVID, so it's just uncertainty, right? The uncertainty is really challenging.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I heard throughout your response. It's really uncertainty on so many different levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Politically, school-wise, you as a founder, you as a mom, at so many different levels.
It's uncertainty is also such an important thing because I feel like we are going in, or we live in a world where uncertainty will kind of be the new normal. We have little to no influence on how this whole geopolitical situation is going to go. COVID was also something that just came up on us. There's a lot of things that I feel we need to kind of adapt to a lot faster than maybe we used to. And I see throughout what you said, there was a lot of values that came through. There was joy, there was compassion, there was a lot of communication, and the need to kind of connect with people, to be there and to give back and do everything that everything works out. How are you gonna bring this into the future? So what are your thoughts on in these uncertain times to kind of go further? What do you want to do, and also how do you then bring the India school into this, because this is such an important little star, I feel like, that links to it.
I think that's a really good question, and it's more important now than ever because of this AI era that we're all kind of being thrust into, whether we like it or not. You've got to get on board with it. And Beverly and I do take a lot of time discussing that. How do we remain true to the values that we want to have as part of our sort of core ethos that resonates through everything that we do? And we're constantly trying to enhance the curriculum and improve and think about what matters and what's important. So we were just discussing the other day that from September, we are going to add a component in our curriculum, which is human connection, because a lot of that deep communication and connection is missing from our lives today. Even myself, I find myself doom scrolling every now and then, I really do. And it's only as half an hour has passed that I realize, oh my God, I've just spent half an hour looking at one Instagram and then trying to figure out who the mother is, who the father is, and what's the backstory. Before you know it, you've gone down some rabbit hole and you've wasted, half an hour of your life. And how do we, in this really fast-paced modern city that we live in, where we are all incredibly busy. It's not a slow-paced, sleepy town, is it? We've all got so much going on, whether it's with our children, whether it's with work, whether it's socializing, travel. How do we give children that time to really breathe, to be able to enjoy their childhood, to not get trapped in a cycle of screens and into this unreal life that a lot of people are living in. So yeah, we really want to bring human values and connection into the forefront of what we're doing. And in the past, where perhaps you wouldn't even think about that, when I was at nursery school and have it at primary school, that was just an everyday part of living. But now we really do have to be intentional about what we want our children to experience, because there's so many different elements that certainly when I grew up, and different factors that we have to think about now, from how much screen time are we giving our children? Do we want them to have zero access, or do we feel that actually we do need them to learn technology because it's going to give them an edge and an advantage, moving forward? If you actually look at studies that have been done with children from 1 year old that have access to technology to those that don't, the learning capacity is actually far greater. I think it was between 15 and 20% more productive for children who used a screen tool, for example, an iPad or a smartphone, to use for an educational platform. I'm not talking about, again, scrolling or YouTube. I'm talking about using learning platforms on these devices. So, however, we leave that to the parents to decide. And we have, chosen at Homegrown that of course will continue to be screen free and allow children just to explore, be curious, learn through play, learn through connection, learn through nature. We just have to remain true to who we are. And I think parents crave that for their children more than ever now, because they have to make those choices. So our parents didn't have to make those choices at all. But I think, parents are very, very conscious about how they want their children to live their early years, and who they're spending time with. And, sadly, you do see some children that, are perhaps spending too much time on their screens, and don't have those communication skills and soft skills that we would learn through play, through human connection. So it's really...
It goes through, right? I just saw in statistics that in the US, 45% of kids between 15 and 21, it was, I think, are diagnosed depressed. 45%. Yeah. And this is an incredible number.
Yeah, and children can get addicted to their screens from a very, very early age. I have teenagers, and have to have boundaries and rules in the house for their smartphones. They're certain, they're not allowed their phones in their bedrooms. They're not allowed to charge their phones upstairs. It's 100% not allowed at the dinner table. And there's certain times where they're not allowed to use their phones. There's no social media. My daughter's just turned 18, so she just got herself an Instagram account. So she was... but because she's never really been on social media, she's not really using it. So, but a lot of children are getting Snapchat. They are getting, from 9-10 years old, Instagram, and they learn how to use it, and perhaps some don't always have the boundaries that or that children are very smart as well and find different ways of getting their social media, even if they're not allowed it. So. As parents, we have to be very switched on, because these kids, they're very smart these days.
Definitely. So somehow we have passed through almost an hour. So Lucy, we usually end our episodes with a key tip. A tip for founders and mothers who are trying to, balance the pressures of being a founder with the financial success, the financial health of a business, but also maintaining your values of joy. For me, I know that has been really key to, uphold the values that I believe in for my business, but I also want it to be successful financially. How do you think about that?
If there's one piece of advice that I could give any mother, or working or non-working mother, it would be that you cannot have joy if you're holding guilt. So for me, especially as a young mother, if I was at work, I'd be feeling extremely guilty that I wasn't with my children. If I was with my children, I would be feeling guilty that I've got a pile of work. And I really missed out. I missed out on those moments at work where I could have been enjoying, learning, growing. I missed out, obviously, with my children more than anything, because the times where I was with them, I was worrying and anticipating, about work and all the things that I needed to do. And when I look back, over the years. If I removed that guilt, there would have been so much more joy. So when we're talking about joy, just, it's so cliche. Everybody says it to you. You know, it's be in that moment. I remember as a young mother talking to another mother who had teenage children and saying, you know, God, when do they start sleeping? I'm so exhausted, you know. But it is true. I would give anything to go back to those times where you can hold your children in your arms, you know, all three of them. So for me, it would be let go of the guilt. If you're at work, you throw yourself into your work and be 100% into your work. Your children are okay. If you're traveling, enjoy your travels. You know, if you're away for 2-3 days, you know, don't spend the whole time crying. Because when I speak to my children and say, what are some of your favorite memories? It was like, oh, when we went over to Auntie Claire's and we stayed there a couple of nights and we had a great time. And you realize I cried that whole holiday because I felt so guilty that I went with you. You know, children are adaptable. I feel like there's so much pressure on mothers these days to do it a certain way and, you know, teach your child, you know, in a particular style. And I think there's just so much, putting too much pressure on ourselves. You learn, you know, every day on what you want, what your values are, how you want to bring your children up, and stick to your gut. Don't let anybody dictate to you how you need to bring your children up. You know inside what's best for your children. And if someone's got something to say about it, well, that's on them, not on you. So let go of the guilt, enjoy yourself. If you go on holiday, don't let other mothers put you down about it. Enjoy those few days. If you want to work. If you want to be a stay-at-home mum and completely be with your children, do it. You know, that's amazing. There's so much purpose and value in that, you know, and a part of me always wishes that I could have done that as well, but I just didn't have the capacity. And I really admire women that can do that as well. You know, let's support one another. Let's, you know, be open to other different ideas and ways of bringing up children, and don't get too obsessed with a particular style or framework of, you know, of how to bring up your children. I never forget, I had a mother who came to me in absolute tears because, you know, she was trying to give her child a completely organic diet, which of course is wonderful as a mother. If we can do that, if we can afford it, if we have the means and the resources, fantastic, great start for your child. However, her husband, when he looked after her little boy or their child, he always wanted to sneak him a few crisps, you know, and she was so overwhelmed by this and didn't know how to handle it. And I just said, listen, if he gets his joy from giving your son a few crisps every now and then, is it really worth getting so stressed and worried and upset about it? Can you let it go? Do you think that is something that you can let go, knowing that you're providing your child with the correct nutrients that you do? You're so thoughtful and intentional with the way that you feed him 99.9% of the time. Do you think that perhaps you could let your husband have that moment with him? You know, and she thought about it. She was like, yes, but, you know, unfortunately, when you're in it, and if that were me, I probably wouldn't have thought at the time, you know, of the advice I was giving. I just think be easy on yourself. Be easy on yourself. Love yourself. You're doing a great job. You know, let the small stuff go. Don't have that guilt, and try and enjoy it as much as you can. Find the joy. Let go of the guilt.
What a last sentence. I think it's a little better. And something I personally really needed to hear. So thank you so much.
A lot of, especially because my husband and I are finally going away for like 2.5 days next week, and yeah, I needed to hear that too.
You know that they will be okay. They'll be having the best time of their lives because whoever they're with will be absolutely spoiling them rotten.
Exactly.
You know, and that's okay. Every now and then, it's, you know, children should be spoiled rotten every now and then.
It's okay.
You know, we have to
Lucy,
find
thank
that balance.
you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. I literally think we should just go next door and meet each other and go further.
Motherhood in Motion,
the podcast for mothers with ambition.